Okay, well, finally, but certainly not lastly, I'll tell you that. And someone who's going to bring it all home and really talk about, yeah, the bigger impact. I know lots of pressure, Alan. Alan Sears, lots of pressure.
Thanks. Well, what a wonderful panel. And going last, I think my job is to be quick and punchy. I'm going to make 3 basic points. Number 1, we face brutal attacks and we can't vote that away. The Ford attacks, the attack on CUPE municipally, McGuinty yesterday in the debate proudly boasting about slashing 7,000 public sector jobs and saying the job's not over yet. That's only the tip of the iceberg. If you look at Greece, you look at Ireland, you look at American states, you realize that they aim to go much deeper. And you look at the grim economic outlook that's on the horizon. Not only where they claim to be driven by the financial crisis, but also where they are acting on the basis of what they call competitive austerity. If their public sector is making so little, we can do it too. They aim for, on their horizon, elimination of collective bargaining rights, as we've seen in a number of American states, and Carolyn was just talking about that, slashing wages and pensions, massive layoffs, harsher immigration controls, and a heavier security policing regime. There are 2 key objectives of this austerity agenda. Number 1 is essentially to reduce to rubble the remains of the welfare state. They really do look at a massive slashing of programs and services to really end the idea that any of us have a right to assistance or services. Through privatization, through user pay, through deep cuts that degrade the remaining services to the extent that those who can turn away from them, and only the most desperate end up dealing with serious, inadequate services, as we see with, for example, public health care in the United States. They want to end, at the same time, the decent working class job with decent pay, with security, with pensions and benefits. They've already gotten away with this to an amazing extent in the private sector, where there has been amazing erosion in terms of security, pensions, benefits, and so on. And they now want to harmonize down by leveling the public sector, driving down wages, slashing benefits and pensions, and undercutting collective bargaining rights. It's a grim picture. It's one that means we really need to fight, and we can't vote our way out of it, in part because no one is opposed to it. And I think we need to be blunt about this. The record of the NDP and its sister parties around the world is fundamentally to be part of this agenda. If you look at Nova Scotia, you look at Manitoba, you look at Greece, you look at Spain, the pace may be a little different. And I'm going to argue a little later on that matters, but they are not going to stop these cuts. If you look at the simple demand, for example, to raise social assistance rates 40% to get them up to the level that they used to be at, which was closer to the poverty line, we don't see the NDP defending even those most simple demands at this point. In fact, what we saw last night, I think, was the NDP claiming to be the best deficit fighters. So number 1, we face brutal attacks, we can't vote that away. Number 2, we need a new commitment to effective solidarity to defeat the austerity agenda. It's our fight that will really determine what happens here, not simply our vote. I'm going to get to voting in a minute, but we are in for a big fight and we can't just continue on the same course. We need a new kind of democratic community labor coalition building, and we're seeing tastes of this around, which is wonderful. That's based on real solidarity and effective action. So people make change with their own hands and feet and vocal cords by taking action in the streets, in their schools, in their workplaces, in their neighborhoods. And that means, most importantly, solidarity with the most vulnerable, because it's really crucial to defend good working class jobs and services, while at the same time supporting those for whom precariousness has been a fact of life for a long time. Many people of color, people without status, many women, and especially women of color, trans people, people with disabilities, people who need social assistance to survive. And I think the wage theft campaign is a brilliant example of making these links. And we need to find links, because if we simply defend the good working class job without at the same time defending the most vulnerable, we're going to end up losing a lot of ground ideologically, but also in terms of many of the most vulnerable people in society. if you look at in places like Spain and Chile, where the fight backs seem to be most effective, some of the key fighters have actually been unemployed youth and students who are extremely cynical about many of the existing organizations. Political parties, unions, a lot of those kinds of things, they believe aren't serving them anymore. We need to be willing to not simply do things the same way, but to not simply engage in activist speed up, where we try to do the same only more so, but to actually think seriously about how we build our counterpower, to find new spaces for discussion and debate and so on. The last thing I want to say, number 3, is elections can't stop the attack. Nonetheless, they actually matter in building effective solidarity. We can't vote our way out of this. Sadly, I would rather we could, but we can't. And yet, this is a time when people are thinking about politics. And it's a mistake to sit it out and to miss this chance to connect in various ways. And so I would argue, and I think many of us here agree, it's really important to vote for the NDP and to talk about that. And there's 3 reasons that I would say that, just to wrap up. Number 1, in some ways this election is a referendum on cuts. And even if an NDP vote isn't a clear and simple vote against the cuts, sadly, it is nonetheless not a vote for them. And a vote for the Liberals or for the Tories is a vote for them, even if it's slightly different paces. So I think we need to vote in this referendum. Secondly, I think it puts us in a position to put demands on the NDP. If the NDP wants to claim to be our party, and if we vote for it, we can also hold them to a different standard. And actually say, you're our party, represent us. Represent people on social assistance. Support the needs that would make healthcare a really viable system. Support public sector workers and so on. Lastly, effective solidarity means building bridges and movement building. And I think that having people like Cathy Crowe, like Jonah Shine, and so on in provincial parliament will make a difference in that. So I think we really need to think about this. Whatever happens, however, on October 6th, and hopefully we'll see more New Democrats elected in Toronto, and hopefully we'll all be out there voting for them. Whatever happens, after October 6th, we're going to need action. We're going to need action on the municipal level, the provincial level, and the federal level. And we need to be mobilizing in new ways, building solidarity across many of the lines that have divided us, even in our movements in the past. Thank you very much.